11 ways to motivate your management team. We're going to talk about an interesting subject, and that's the subject of motivation, because I think that each of us is constantly looking for ways that we can help the people that we work with work more effectively. And that's motivation. And we're constantly looking for what is that key that can really unlock the potential of each one of those people. And what I'd like to do is start by giving you 3 basic principles of motivation, the first of which might shock you. And here's principle number 1. You cannot motivate other people. Now you might say, wait a minute, this is about motivation, and you start by telling me you can't motivate other people. That's right, and bear with me a moment. Let's go on a little bit, and I think that what I'm saying will make some sense for you. Principle number 2 is that all people are motivated. And you might say, wait a minute, I know some people, they're late 3 days a week, they're sick the other 2 days. You mean to tell me they're motivated? Absolutely. They're more motivated to be sick and late than well and on time. Why? Because motivation is a motive for acting. It's a reason for doing what we do, and almost all of us can justify or explain our behavior. Which leads me to principle number 3, and that's that people do things for their reasons, not your reasons. People do things for their reasons, not your reasons. Now that allows me then to go back and add a parenthesis to number 1. You can't motivate other people, but you can create a climate or an environment where they motivate themselves. You can create a climate or an environment where they motivate themselves. And that's what we want to look at, is how can we create then that motivational environment. And I think sometimes what's helpful is to look at what destroys motivation in people. So what I'd like to do is talk for just a little bit about how to kill motivation. I mean, maybe you've got some people that are just too motivated, too enthusiastic, too eager to get the job done. Let me give you 5 ways that you can kill the motivation of almost any adult. Number 1 is have little personal contact. Have little personal contact. For example, if you call a meeting, be the last one to show up at the meeting and make sure that as soon as the meeting's over, you leave so you don't interact with anyone. You just come in, do the meeting, and leave. Never stop by to see somebody while they're working. See them only when you absolutely have to. And that's sure to dampen people's enthusiasm, because most people like contact. They like to connect. So number 1, have little personal contact. Number 2, get people in a passive mood and keep them there. You know, let me use an example out of a meeting. Let's say that you're doing some sort of staff meeting, or it might be a sales meeting. Well, my suggestion would be that you use a lot of lecture, don't use any interaction, and if it's an all-day meeting, after lunch, start off with a film, preferably black and white, about an hour long, at least 20 years old, and make it clear that if there's any props or any equipment shown in the film, it's obvious to everybody that this is obsolete. Okay, so get people in a passive mood and keep them there. Why? Because most people really prefer to be involved. So if you don't allow that, you'll kill their motivation. Number 3 is assume that people can apply what they're taught. Don't bother with examples. I mean, these are adults, so if you want them to do something, just tell them what to do and don't bother to explain it. Certainly don't show them how to do it. Just tell them what to do and then skip the examples. I mean, you can run much shorter meetings. If you skip the illustrations, you can cut your meeting times by 80%. Of course, nobody will be able to apply anything because most of us like examples. I mean, somebody might say something to us, and what we really get excited about is, give me an example. And then somebody gives that example, and it turns the light bulb on for us. So skip the examples. Number 4, be quick to criticize. Be quick to criticize. And remember this management principle. Criticism should be delivered in public. Praise, if any, given in private. Okay, criticism should be given in public, praise, if any, given in private. Matter of fact, I think back to a time about, probably 10 years ago or so. I was at a meeting and I thought, well, here's a great opportunity for me to be a participant. And so the speaker arrived, and as a matter of fact, he illustrated probably every one of the principles we've talked about so far, because this meeting had a reception from 5 to 6 and a dinner from 6 to 7. And then at 7 o'clock, the speaker showed up. I mean, he was not there for the reception. He was not there for the dinner. And he started his presentation by saying, I don't really know what I'm doing here. But I was told that I had something useful to say, so here goes. And actually, I could have been better prepared for this, but I thought that this was next Tuesday, and it wasn't until this morning I realized I was supposed to be here tonight. Now, of course, you'd be eager to go to a management meeting with that kind of focus, wouldn't you? And so he said, but here goes. With that, he picked up a piece of chalk and proceeded to lecture. And he lectured for 55 minutes. And at the end of 55 minutes, he said, do you believe that if you change attitudes, you change behavior, or that if you change behavior, you change attitudes? I got to remember, this is a group that's had an hour reception, an hour's worth of dinner, 55 minutes of lecture. Half of us couldn't even remember the question by the time he completed it. And he got absolutely no response. So I raised my hand. And he looked at me and said, you want to try? And I said, well, I believe that if you change attitudes, you always influence behavior. And if you change behavior, you sometimes influence attitudes. Now, by that point in my career, I had academic training that said that that was true. I also had 10 years' experience in industry that told me it was true. And you have to remember, I'm sitting with about 30 people that I didn't know very well. Had just met a couple of hours earlier. And this person looked at me and said, do you still believe that? All the literature points out, and I always wonder when somebody says that, all what literature? I mean, I do a little reading, and I think I have fairly good self-esteem, but I didn't feel too good. And then finally, he went on, and about